the shift was uh, when I stopped trying to control everything and I got really curious because, again, growing up the way I did, you had to figure things out on your own. You've got to learn and teach yourself how to not just survive, but thrive.
Welcome to Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. I am your host, Dr. Cynthia. With over 30 years in the corporate world as a single mom, cancer survivor, and often the only woman in the C-suite, I know the weight high-achieving women carry. Now, as an executive coach and international speaker, I help women reclaim their agency and challenge the norms that hold them back. This show is for ambitious women ready to lead with intention, featuring candid conversations with powerful leaders sharing the real stories behind their success. If you're ready to look up and step up, you're in the right place. And if you're ready to go a step further, join me on May 7th for my virtual working session, From Drift to Direction. I'll give you the tools and support to stop drifting and start leading with clarity. Reserve your spot today and use code CCL for the special $79 rate. Seats are limited. Details are in the show notes. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. I'm your host and your coach, Dr. Cynthia. High-performing women don't break down, they drift. And this episode explores how to recognize that slow erosion of energy and clarity before it becomes depletion, and how a purposeful pause can be the most powerful leadership and personal move you can make. Pam Dwyer is a best-selling author, speaker, and founder and CEO of TPKK Concepts, a consulting and media company specializing in brand strategy, thought leadership, and podcast production. She's the creator of the Delay the Binge framework and the +1 theory, a philosophy centered on finishing stronger than you started. Pam helps women pause long enough to recognize patterns they didn't even realize were shaping their decisions, and then take one intentional step forward. Sound familiar? Her cornerstone message, "Your past does not define you, it prepares you," is rooted in lived experience and has helped women reframe their stories and step into who they are becoming with greater clarity and confidence. She is also the host of the Delay the Binge podcast, where she explores becoming, identity, and sustainable personal growth. Her background in youth ministry continues to shape her passion for helping others find their voice. Pam, it is so good to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you. We've been nurturing our relationship for some time now. We came together through a mutual contact, and I'm so grateful for that. Our
Me
thought
too.
leadership is so intertwined and so connected in so many ways.
Mhm.
But we all bring sort of our origin story to what brings us to this point. What's the background, the moment that sort of culminated for you to want to share your wisdom and your experience with others?
Yeah. I love that question because it's an opportunity to, just show everything that has happened in my life leading up to where I'm at now. And my work didn't come from one idea, right? It came from patterns I
Mm,
kept seeing in my own life over time. And eventually, I started putting language around what was actually helping me move forward. I had to put a name to it
right.
that seemed to help me push forward. And one of those became what I now call the +1 theory. This idea of finishing stronger than you started, just one step at a time, small incremental steps.
Hmm.
And that really helped me plow through a lot of issues that was happening as a result of all of my issues that I thought I had dealt with from my childhood.
Hmm.
And we'll share a little bit on that, but I had a very abusive and traumatic childhood. And when you grow up like that, you carry a lot of baggage with you into your
Hmm.
adulthood. And it just kept coming back and interfering with all of my plans.
Right. Right.
And so I started utilizing this plus one theory and also not being plagued by my past, right? I didn't want my past to define me.
Right.
I wanted to use the past for purpose so that it prepared me to do the things that I was being led to do.
Mm.
And especially if you're willing to look at your past differently so you can use it. So I started being very curious. And I didn't understand at the time how much my behavior was being driven by patterns and that I had built. So I
Mhm.
just kept going and I kept performing, I kept doing. And also a result of growing up like that is that we overperform,
Right.
right? It's our safety net. It's our guarantee that we're going to be accepted and I feel self-worth and the people around me are not going to think badly of me,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that is just a result. And a lot of people struggle with that, with self-image, but I think mine was from the way I grew up.
Right.
So over time, all that started to connect the plus one theory and, not letting my past define me, but, using it like
Right.
fuel. And I realized there was always this moment, right, before the behavior, and I was missing it. And that moment was eventually what became delay the binge. Delay the binge is really about recognizing a moment before a pattern runs automatically and creating just enough space to choose something different, right?
Mhm.
Not perfectly, just intentionally. And when you can do that in real time, you start to change how decisions are made.
Right.
And that shows up in everything: communication, leadership, performance. So, what I really help people do in a nutshell is I recognize what's driving their decisions early enough to choose differently on purpose.
Right. Right. It's so interesting. The same month that your episode drops, Laurel Weirs, is a clinical, psychologist, therapist, etcetera, and she deals with triggers, and so when I'm listening to you, it's the triggers that then create this behavior, right?
Yes.
And she deals with the let's go back and figure out what the event was. What was the
Mhm.
trauma that
Uh-huh.
creates the triggers, and let's go rewire the brain around the triggers. What I also hear you saying is when you recognize that you have these patterns or these triggers, is if you can just have a purposeful pause for just a moment before you go
Yes.
do the thing, right? Bite somebody's head off, grab the donuts, go online to bet on something, right?
Y
Grab the bottle of pick your poison.
yes.
Um, that's where the magic sort of can happen. What how was that for you? What was that moment that you went, "This is how I change this behavior. This is the way this is what's working for me."
Well, there was a pivotal moment. I thought you would appreciate that, but there was a pivotal moment in my life because of the pain of the past. I didn't realize it, but I didn't wanna go there. I
Yeah,
didn't have time. I was wearing
right.
all the hats. I had a company that I was trying to grow, and I had young kids at home, my husband, other relationships, and I just didn't wanna I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to
Mhm,
numb that out so that I could continue to check all the boxes, do all the things that I was determined to do, and I was
mhm.
doing very well. I was succeeding, and we went on a vacation, and I was on a plane, and I couldn't this still affects me, I couldn't get the seatbelt to buckle, and the flight attendant said, "Ma'am, you're gonna need an extender."
Mm,
And that moment, it wasn't the moment itself, it was what it revealed to me that I hadn't noticed.
right.
I was over 300 pounds. Now, I
Wow.
knew I was battling weight, I knew I was overweight, but in my mind, I
Mhm.
was just too busy to see what my body was trying to tell me.
Right.
I'd been running on empty for a long time and I just wasn't paying attention. So at the time, I was building a company, wearing all the hats, working with a team that was very disengaged.
Right.
But my eagerness to please, because that's another behavior, is over pleasing, and I was really trapped in that. Didn't want to hurt their feelings, even though they weren't doing it
Right.
the way I wasn't being a good leader,
Yeah.
wasn't engaging them better. So instead of addressing it and what was happening, I just picked up the pieces and I did it all myself. I thought, well, I'm just going to do this myself.
Right.
So I ignored what my body was trying to tell me, and I was quietly depleted. And what happens when we get to that place? We don't stop. We cope. We survive.
Mm.
And for me, it showed up in how I was eating. There's many other ways that we cope, but I was just trying to find enough energy to get through one more day. It was a dopamine hit.
Right.
Arguing with my husband was a dopamine hit.
Right.
So I made a decision, pretty rash, on that plane, that when I got off the plane, I immediately called a bariatric clinic. And I was intent on getting a tool that
Mhm.
was going to do all this for me. I chose bariatric surgery because I thought if I could control the behavior, I wouldn't have to think about it anymore.
Right.
And I thought the tool would fix it. And the process, man, that they prepare you. They teach you nutrition, lifestyle, and psychology to prepare you for the transition. But no one, and was a pivotal moment for me too. No one talked about maintenance,
Mm.
sustain the
Yeah.
change. And there's a reason the surgeon said you have a year to lose the bulk of your weight and then regain becomes an issue. I lost the weight. I lost 140 pounds, but then regain was an issue because I'd never addressed what was driving that behavior in the first place. I
Right.
was still, operating the same way underneath, still pushing, still coping. And at the same time, the business was struggling. I was trying to sustain growth the same way, doing everything myself, but
Mhm.
I couldn't sustain that either. And that's when it really clicked. If I had learned how to maintain my weight, no matter what it was, 300 pounds, 200 pounds, 400 pounds, if you learn how to maintain, then you have to address the behavior behind the pattern.
Right. Right.
And, and that's when it
Yeah.
changed for me.
Yeah. That's such a vulnerable story. Thank you for sharing that. It's
Mm,
it's I think that that's the core to behavioral change. You have to have that sort of emotional a wake up call awareness, whatever it is. I want to tether it for just a moment to, I've been focusing on this notion of drift, and this is where
mhm,
our thought leadership is so complementary. I feel like we drift in whether it's our physiological health, right? Mental, physical, emotional, our prosperity, so financial, our sense of purpose, our potential, or our people, relationships. It sort of happens, I've identified in one of three ways. One is unconscious, it's just happening and I'm just not aware. The other is more incremental, where I'm not seeing the patterns. So there's a thing, it happens, and I sort of dismiss it. And the thing it happened, my pants are a little tight, and I ate more last night, and then later I get on the scale. Oh well, and so we sort of dismiss it. So it's incremental, and then there's
mhm.
avoidant drift
Yes.
where it's it's too hard, it's too much, I don't want to deal with it, I stayed in a toxic, emotionally abusive, not my children's dad, I always like to make sure I say that, relationship, in my later in life, and that's when I got my PhD because it was avoidant. I threw everything into
Yeah.
my potential, right? Into that
Uh-huh.
aspect of my human flourishing to avoid this relationship that I felt stuck, trapped, etc.
Mhm.
Um, and so 5 years of your life go by, right? And you don't get those 5 years back.
Nope.
Um why I think for the woman listening or the person listening is if any part of this is resonating, it's, well, where have you drifted
Mhm.
relationally, in your career, in your health, in your mental wellness, etcetera? And is it because you just weren't paying attention? Is it that you're not identifying the patterns, which I know we'll get to?
Yes.
Or is it that you're avoiding it because it's just too hard? And it sounds like, I don't want to put words in your mouth. It sounds like it might have started incremental, but at some point it was a bit of an avoidance. It was,
Mhm.
I'm going to throw myself into something other than that.
Yeah. Yep, it
Yeah.
was. It definitely was, you know, and I did the shift was, uh, when I stopped trying to control everything, and I got really curious because, again, growing up the way I did, you had to figure things out on your own.
Mhm.
You've got to learn and teach yourself how to not just survive, but thrive,
Mhm.
and be better than you were growing up so you can
Mhm.
offer more things for your family.
Right.
You want it to change what happened to you,
Yeah, you
and
wanna
it
stop
becomes
the cycle.
yeah, almost obsessive. And,
Mm.
sometimes that can be unhealthy as well, but we're not talking about that today, but
Right.
I sta I
Right.
started paying attention, to what was happening right before my decision to overeat, overwork, overplease, and not move my body, okay?
Mhm.
We are we are intelligent women. We know what happens if we do these patterns, if we don't
Right.
move our bodies. We know, and we don't want that. We don't want the consequence, and yet still each day we still don't do it.
Right. Right.
And so instead of just I figured out that I was just reacting
Mhm.
after the behavior, the pattern. And that's where it shifted for me because I realized that that moment is where the real influence is.
Right.
And I didn't just see that in myself. I was seeing it in every corporate environment I had been part of.
Yeah.
No, different behaviors, but it was the same pattern underneath. And I was so interested in observing it and then trying to help make them aware. The awareness is
Mm.
key.
Right.
And so in my own business, we would go to a new client, a small business, and they needed help with their branding and marketing, but we couldn't get to that part every single time because we had to work through what was driving those people, you know, how they were showing up, why they weren't succeeding with all their previous efforts. I
Mhm.
mean, so I started calling it brand therapy.
Right. Oh, that's good. No, that makes a lot of sense. It may it
Yes, because it was
yeah.
just in the way. It was like a wall, and we couldn't do what we were hired to do until we helped the entire team understand, what was broken.
Yeah, what's underneath the thing. Yeah, don't just
Mhm,
fix the superficial, but what's underneath it. It reminds me something I wanted to ask you about, and
mhm,
it feels like that these triggers, these behaviors that are not healthy, that are not serving us,
mhm,
are really prevalent in high performing women and maybe overlooked more in high performing women. We're so focused on sustaining a performance level, and an expectation that we're sort of living on fumes. We live in an environment that rewards um,
mm.
overdoing of pretty much anything, especially when it comes to work. Has that been when you speak about corporate? Why is it that self, reported type A personalities are more are more vulnerable to this behavior?
Because we suffer from, perfectionism
Mhm.
and these expectations of us. I mean, we're going to excel, we're going to thrive, we're going to succeed, and the goal is to be the best at it,
Mhm.
at whatever cost, but what the problem I've got an entire chapter that I've written in my upcoming book for Delay the Binge about quiet depletion. It
Mhm.
affects a huge percentage of women, and it's because they're so successful on the outside,
Yeah.
but on the inside, they're exhausted. They haven't had time to even know who they are or what they want.
Right.
They just know they're performing, and they're letting the behavior and the pattern control them because it offers that temporary relief,
Mhm.
after the reaction, after the breakdown, but
I
by that point, they're already reacting, and the real shift is learning to notice sooner because there's a moment before every decision, and if you can just learn to recognize it, you can create the space you need to choose instead of react, and that changes everything with the communication, decision-making, performance, you know?
Right, right. I love your phrase quiet depletion. I don't love
Mhm.
the reality of that, but I love I I love the phrase quiet depletion. It's so many of the women listening, right? That they're high functioning, they're delivering, and yet they're exhausted maybe in ways they can't quite explain. Um, how do you advise the person that goes, "Yep, that's me," to start to recognize what that looks like or feels like so they can pause?
Yes, and I love that question because I see, I'm out there studying, researching, trying to find, educate myself and research on how I can share this message better. And I see a lot, Cynthia, of people talking of on the pause, on the pivot, on everything that is wrong.
Right.
But I don't see a lot of people offering just one thing, one act you can start today to begin the process because it is small steps. It's not
Mhm.
something you can change overnight, you
Right.
know. And when someone says pause or write in your journal or the typical things we want to encourage people. I'm a huge advocate for journaling, by the way, but I mean that's what my first book is. It's all about my journal. But I- to tell someone that's exhausted already and that has
Mhm.
already crashed through the wall of just being out of control, telling them to pause and slow down is probably the last thing they want to hear.
Right. Right.
But we must use different words. And if I just say pause, slow down, they're just going to, bat it away. It's not going to help them. They're not
Yeah.
going to do it.
Right.
They're not going to see results. So I say, don't slow down. You can keep going at the pace you're going, but I just want you to become more intentional.
Mhm.
And the next time you're about to make a decision you've made 100 times before, whether it's with food, wine, work,
Right.
whatever it is, and you don't do it again the next day, so you feel more and more failed. You're harder on yourself than anyone else.
Right.
You need to give yourself some grace, be more intentional, and just do one thing today.
Yeah.
Just one thing in that direction, and to figure out, okay, what's actually driving this right now? Because
Mhm.
that's the moment where you either react or you choose. You know,
Mm.
you reacting is so different, but you can choose, you can take control, and the earlier you notice, the more influence you'll have, and that's where everything begins to change.
Right. I feel too, I mean, so many of the amazing thought leaders that I've had on, including you, and certainly core to stop drifting,
Mhm.
is this notion of listening to your body.
Oh, yes.
Right? I mean, the body does in fact keep score. And so
Yes.
oftentimes, and I've heard this reinforced through so many different people. It's like you said, so much of our theories and frameworks, ours and others, there's overlap. And so pick what
Mhm.
works for you. I think what you and I are purpose-driven messengers.
Yeah.
We just want to help people feel better,
Yes.
be better, right? Live with joy and in their full potential. Um but for me, it's which is why I started the 7-minute pivot. It's you can find 7 minutes, you set a timer, but what I keep finding is that check-in is where is my body telling on me? Is it I'm not sleeping? Is it I feel like I've put on weight? Maybe I've lost weight? Is it that I've got a chronic headache or, shoulder pain? And then sort of sorting through where am I out of alignment? Is this a
Yeah.
work thing I'm stressed about? Is this a relational thing? And it's not so much about living in the past. I think you make such a good point about, we can't change what's done. It's about that
No.
small incremental, the little thing you
Mhm.
can do to change the trajectory. I like to say that, we people say they're stuck.
Yeah.
You know, we think stuck means not moving. Think that stuck me implies as though you are literally not moving. Well, the reality is we're energy, we're human beings, we live in time. That we're always moving. And by not being intentional, to your word, is that
Yes.
we're just moving in a direction that we're not choosing, right?
Yeah.
So I'm moving if I eat the thing that I wish I hadn't, or I didn't go on the walk and I sat on my booty for an extra 3 hours working like I've never done that 1,000 times, That's a choice. And
Yes.
that's still moving. It's just not moving in the direction that maybe is the healthiest. Yeah. So then where do you start to identify the patterns? You mentioned the patterns. What's
Mhm.
the way I mean, maybe it feels obvious, but I'm thinking for the person listening that's going, have I dismissed patterns along the way as individual events or instances rather than pulling back and looking at this from 50,000 feet and saying, oh my goodness, when I look at the collection of things, this is a pattern. How did you do that?
Well, I got really obsessed, and I still am, the neuroscience of the brain,
Yeah.
right? That's gonna help you understand your body and listen to it, because if you understand how it works, the different parts of the brain, we have you'll be well, you're probably all too familiar with this, but the lower part of the brain, or the lower brain chatter,
Right.
I call it, is the survival piece of
Mm,
your brain, fight or flight.
that's right.
And so when your body is screaming, "I'm stressed, I have horrible anxiety right now, I'm getting overheated, and I cannot get out of this loop," your lower brain's gonna jump in and say, "Okay, so what comforted us last time? Oh, it was
Mm,
that chocolate cake, or that huge bowl of spaghetti with the pizza on the side.
yeah.
Remember that? And so I wanna go to that, because that's the pattern you've developed. The brain loves patterns. And so you've developed this pattern of going to foods that don't serve you, but it gives you a temporary release, a temporary rest,
Right.
And so how do we bring the frontal part of our brain, the thinking part of your brain, how do we bring it back online?
Mhm.
And so what I would tell people is just, first of all, understand how the brain works, and due diligence is researching that. It's everywhere. It's all over the place. And so if you understand that, then you can start to work with your brain just like you would with your team at work.
Mhm.
You have
Mhm.
to start listening, though. As you said, listening is truly a skill. And if you practice listening each and every day to what your brain is screaming, but don't be deceived by your lower brain.
Right.
It's just wanting to temporarily appease you.
Right.
The frontal part of your brain will give you long-term results.
Yeah.
And it will, if you bring it online, and the only way to bring it online is the pause. Give yourself just a brief moment. You know what you should eat. You know if you should exercise. You know if you're over pleasing or saying yes when you wanted to say no, you know?
Right.
So you know these things. So how do you stop the train? And you do
Mhm.
that with a pause, with whatever possible ways that are convenient to you. And that is breath work, or, meditation, or writing in that journal just one sentence,
Right.
or I sometimes look at photos of myself at my heaviest, that helps me pause long enough to and feel what I used to be, when I wasn't paying attention or listening to my body.
Mhm.
I mean, I was very sick and tired, and I couldn't perform in the manner that I needed to.
Right.
And we sometimes forget. And journaling, I just want to say this, nobody remembers how they feel 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Your body does, and your
Mhm.
brain does. But, you know, we don't really think about how we were feeling, and the only way you can track it is if you journal it, and it doesn't have to be a lot. You just say, "I ate the cake because of this."
Right.
At work, every Tuesday when we have our staff meeting, I know that I'm gonna just gorge myself because I'm stressed.
Right.
Whatever the pattern is, you will discover it. So be curious because curiosity brings clarity. And if you have clarity, then you can do something about it and find out who the heck you are, you know, and be the best that you can. So,
Yeah. I love curiosity. I love
uh,
curiosity, and I've said this on a recent show because it's come up a couple times recently. I've always thought about curiosity externally. I'm super curious about other people, which is why I
mhm,
love hosting a podcast, is you get to meet so many amazing people who have such unique backgrounds and wanna share their message of hope and healing and purpose. Um but it's been new to me to think about it in the context, perhaps in the last maybe even 9 months of being sort of I inwardly curious. Curious about what's provoking that feeling when that happens. What is triggering that behavior or that action? And to your point, our brain is so powerful and can be the best thing in the world and the biggest saboteur possible
yes,
when it
exactly.
right, when it comes to, like, trying to just keep us safe,
Mhm,
comfy, and all the things. It's interesting that when you mentioned the journaling, I wanna highlight that because when I was in the toxic relationship that I've mentioned, on a few shows, if you're with a narcissist, if you're in a relationship that could be a toxic boss, it could be, someone out there will have a relationship to this notion, is that survival mode is a bit about isolating each incident as a single incident and then sort of I'm an optimist, I'm a happy person, I don't like to live in doom and gloom, and so I work through it and I get through it and I sort of shove it away and life goes on until the next thing happens. But for me, and I think as I've researched and studied others, whether regardless of weight or gambling or relationship or not fulfilling your career, whatever it is, again, it's that brain trying to keep us safe, is that I isolated them. And it wasn't until journaling
yeah.
how I was feeling in the moments when something happened that I was able to go back and not feel like I had completely lost my mind, right? Especially dealing with a narcissist, that I was able to go back and go, No, I really do have a right to be angry and upset. Like this, this kind of thing has happened 8 times before over the course of the last, however many months. But prior to journaling it, I spent a few years just isolating each incident, surviving to move on and to the next thing. So I
Oh,
think
and you were ignoring it. You weren't
ignoring it, avoiding it.
avoiding it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, journaling truly brings awareness, and everybody is truly unique in whatever it is they're struggling with. It cannot be the same across the board,
Right.
which is why we need to take a unique approach to each person's, efforts.
Hmm.
And, to pause, everybody can pause,
Right.
but what you do with that pause and how long you take it just depends on you and what you need to do to thrive and
Right.
to make choices that serve you.
Yeah. I think when we talked one other time, you said there's so many frameworks out there. Employ whichever one works for you. Mel Robbins' 5-second rule, right? That's part of that
Yeah.
pause. Maybe
Yes.
that's all it is for you. Maybe you can count to 5 and get your booty out of bed and off you go. Um, Some people may need longer than 5,
Yes.
or it may be a different scenario. So, pause, it doesn't mean stop, it doesn't mean slow down, it doesn't mean disrupt your life, it means just give a purposeful pause to question, where's this coming from? Is this my uh, lower survival brain
Mhm.
that is just trying to keep me satiated and happy and safe, or
Right.
is this the conscious choice that I want to be making in this moment? Look for patterns because patterns help us identify, is this a one time thing, or is this, boy, I feel like I go grab that glass of wine every time my boss is nasty to me. And
Yeah.
that's not a once in a while thing, whatever that
Mhm.
might be.
Mhm.
Um, and then I want to talk about the small action because I think what's so important is it's not about overhauling your
Yeah.
entire life in one moment. It isn't that, oh my goodness, I do have a problem in my relationship. I guess I should go file for a divorce, or I should go quit my job tomorrow, or I should, put a padlock on my refrigerator.
Mhm.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about
Right.
one small intentional choice that you make. And is that really then feeding into this plus one theory?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Because everyone thinks that change is like this big dramatic effort thing where you change and then tomorrow it's all good,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
but it's not. You have to tap into we all have this, you know, I established the plus one theory in 8th grade. And I think I shared with you, but it was just running a 4 lap mile. And I was very malnourished because growing up I
Right.
didn't have food and I hated it. And the rule was you had to start over if you stopped
Mm.
running. And so I could never finish. And the entire class would, in 8th grade, that's horrible,
Yeah,
waiting on me.
absolutely.
And so that's the day, that's another moment for me when I got so angry and I started crying just at the unfairness of my situation. And the more emotional I got, the faster I was running. And before I knew it, I was on 3rd lap and then 4th lap. I finished it faster than running a full sprint. And so
Wow.
as I was laying there trying to catch my breath, I thought, "What on earth? Where did that come from?"
Right.
But it came from inside of me. We all have that reserve. We all have that fuel, and we just need to take a moment to learn how to tap into it,
Mhm.
because once you do, you're gonna be unstoppable.
Yeah.
And what I mean by unstoppable is you are going to be content and happy and just thriving. The reality of it is, I mean, we're the hardest people on ourselves. I am the hardest person on myself.
Mm.
I have to remind myself, even now, even with this framework,
Right.
what they say about the shoemaker has the worst looking shoes.
That's right.
But,
That's right.
but, but I really have to, and I do it with words, I guess, because I'm a writer. The plus
Mhm.
one means doing your best and then finding this reserve and doing it better than you did before, finishing stronger than you started.
Yeah.
But, I have to be careful because I use words. I don't like the word discipline.
Hmm.
I really don't. And so what I teach a lot of my clients is we don't use discipline, we use devotion.
Mm.
So if you're devoted to becoming the best you can, best person that you can be, that's what and I guess willpower, it's not a matter of willpower or anything like that. It's just giving yourself grace each and every day and knowing that it takes small steps that you were talking about.
Right.
Those small steps, and it could be, but you have to find out what your small step is. What is really going to work, because only you can answer that.
That's right. That's right.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
I, um I love the notion of the reserve of having something, there's still something in the tank, right? There's that little extra
Yes.
gas in the tank, that reserve that you can tap into when you need it, and the devotion
Mhm.
to use it in the right places because
Yes.
so often I think we tap in to even our reserves to put energy into the wrong things because we're trying to prove ourselves or we're trying to um, be worthy, whatever that thing may be. And so I love the sort of the combination of
Mhm.
delay the binge and the plus one theory, because when you delay the binge, if I'm hearing you correctly, and I'll say this back so you can let me know, is I feel like that delaying the binge is really about not taking on things that don't serve you, what in whatever capacity.
Mm.
Saying yes when you should say no. It could be anything and everything, being a people pleaser, what have you. It's delaying the binge is pausing just long enough and checking in and making a choice to not take on what doesn't serve you. And the plus one theory is where it matters and when it matters. You've got
Mhm.
just a little more left in the tank that
Oh,
you
yeah.
can get there.
That is the can you come on my show?
Beautiful.
Because that's perfect.
Well, thank you. All you, all you.
You've
Um,
captured the entire essence of and what I've done, I don't know if you realize this, I've taken everything in my life and I
yeah,
have applied it into one effort to help others,
right.
and that fulfills me more than I can ever
Yeah,
say. That's all I wanna do is just help others figure it out if they're struggling, and maybe you aren't you think you aren't struggling, but your body is telling you it is, and
yeah,
you need to listen to your body because it wants what's best for you.
that's
It's the
right.
most genuine, message you can get.
That's right. And for the person listening, the Stop Drifting Diagnostic Survey, it's free. It's on my website, drcynthia.com/resources. Takes less than 10 minutes. It looks at those 5 dimensions of human flourishing so that you can see where you may be over indexing energy that isn't serving you well, and
Yeah.
maybe where you are depleted, where you need to be spending more time and energy once you have that sort of big picture view, and again, and I find that I have to look at my Stop Drifting Diagnostic Survey weekly, which sounds like I'm a slow learner, and maybe I am, but for me, I get hyper focused. So if I'm
Mhm.
really in flow with work, it can be very all consuming. Or if I'm
Yeah.
really in flow with I got back in the gym after the first of the year after taking not intentionally, but being out of the gym for a year. And it's, now it's super important to me. And I can be a little hyper focused on things. And so I have to check in now and then and say, okay, to me, it's a balance board.
Yeah.
It's not a scale because I don't think all the things in our life are ever in equal balance. But for me, it's that balance board of where am I about to teeter off because I'm putting all my effort and energy and leaving something else on autopilot that is drifting and going to be smashing into the rocks at some point if I don't, pay attention. Um, and you've given us a framework that says once you have ooh, I should probably be paying more attention there. Now, how do you take it to
Mhm.
the next level?
Yes, and there are many levels, but I help others remember with the ABCs, which is awareness, which is just literally asking yourself, "Why do I keep doing this every day?"
Yes.
Try to just figure out, you know, why the pain? Why am I doing
Mm,
this to myself every day, even though I promised myself I won't,
right.
you know? And I kinda reverse it, but, choosing brings choice brings clarity, right?
Right.
And you'll be more clearer on why if you take a pause to do that, and then you can continue becoming. And I
Mm,
do wanna point that out. There is nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you,
mm-mm,
anyone listening. You are your own person, and you just have to learn to how to tap into your strengths,
right.
and each one of us have different ones,
That's right.
you know, and we just tap into that, but we're all in a state of becoming,
Yes.
you know?
I love that word. I love that word.
I do
I
too.
think it's so helpful too for the ambitious career professional because I feel like, and I just had this epiphany recently. Um, I do think that there's sometimes a point where you're reaching so much to reach a certain point that you think that there's an end, right? I was at
Uh-huh.
the pinnacle of my career in my CAO position, making, whatever money and doing all the things as though I had arrived. And and so when that's taken away or that changes, it's dramatic until you reframe to realize that you never arrive. We're always becoming.
Yes.
This is an ongoing journey. That was a chapter. That was a time and a place and a phase, but for me to still become, I had to move on from that to do
Yes.
something else that um was really fulfilling my calling at this point and stage in life, and so you're right, it's never about being broken. It's
No.
about who are you becoming and what is left of your becoming? Where are you going next?
Exactly. And becoming also means coming back to yourself, to who you really
Mm,
are. We lose that. We
we
lose
do.
our identity with quiet depletion.
Mhm.
So becoming is just coming back to who you are, really are.
Yeah. And quiet depletion, again, it's such a
Mm.
poignant phrase.
Yes.
I even think, and I've talked about her, and she's talked about it. My daughter was a stay-at-home mom for about 5 years, and just recently went back into the workplace. But one of the things she talked about, I had her on the podcast, and I had never heard her say this, so it was news to me. But she talked about um, losing her sense of her losing her identity, that she became a mom and wife
Yeah.
and lost sort of the rest of who she is, and that's not to say being a stay-at-home mom and a wife is not enough of an identity, but for her there were so many aspects. She's a musician, she directs musicals, she's into theater, and so many parts of her sort of were put on the sidelines, and she sort of lost sight of who she was beyond that. And again, you think you've arrived. She always wanted
Yeah.
to be a wife and mom. And so it's like, "Okay, I'm here now, so that's it." And it's like,
Mhm.
"No, there's still a lot more growing and being and get and making sure you know who you are." Back to your excellent point.
Well, yes, and it's easy to lose yourself in whatever it is you're doing, whether it be your career or at home. That's why empty nesters have such a hard time
Yeah,
adjusting because their whole lives revolved around their kids.
yeah, that's exactly right. Before we go to the one last question, because our time is passing too quickly, I did want to share, for those of you who are watching, I'm holding up this copy of this beautiful, beautiful memoir, this book from the Piney Woods is the name, and you go under a pen name. Pam's pen name is PJ Hamilton. So PJ Hamilton from the Piney Woods. You've heard Pam allude to growing up in an abusive, difficult upbringing. She walks through that in the most raw, real, vulnerable, authentic, and poignant. I mean, it's so as hard as it is to read many of the experiences. The way you share it is so beautiful and so poignant. It's just you're such a beautiful writer. I'm so excited for your next 2 books. You
Oh,
have Branches, which is a
mhm.
sequel that will be coming out, and then you also have, Delay the Binge, which will be
Yes.
coming out, and so we will continue to watch for those. Branches will be under your pen name, correct? PJ
Mhm.
Hamilton,
Yes, PJ
and then
Hamilton and
right. And then, Delay the Binge will be under Pam Dwyer. So you can
yeah,
find her both places, but, if you were intrigued or struck by some of the, comments that were made about Pam's upbringing and you really want just a beautiful book and a beautiful memoir, I encourage you to find and read that.
thank you. Thank you, Cynthia, for that so much, and there's also my short stories, I do wanna mention that. I post them every Tuesday. So if you're on the email list, you will be the first to receive. And it literally takes 2 to 5 minutes to read, and they're hilarious, East Texas humor, but also with a very, very deep life lesson. So I encourage you to go to authorpjhamilton.com and sign up on that list and be the first to get these amazing stories that I love writing for everyone. So,
Absolutely. And we will make sure that for those of you that are running or walking or driving, um, keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road. We will make sure that that's in the show notes because I've written it down for myself because I'm going to be the a new subscriber when we wrap up today. For the person listening, I always like to
mhm.
close with one small thing you would encourage the woman listening to start doing with intention today.
Pause and catch that moment, right? And create enough space to choose differently. And just remember small steps. It took a while to be where you're at now. So you just give yourself a little grace and a little space and to choose differently. And you can change how decisions are made. You can do that.
Yeah.
And it'll show up in everything you do in your life. So
Great advice. Great advice. And thank you for the work you do with the
yeah,
children in the youth ministry as well, continuing to pay it forward and just use your lived experiences and your gifts and talents um, to just bless others. And I know you blessed our audience today. So thank you for all that you do. For those
you're
of
so
you that have tuned in today, thank you once again for the privilege of sharing a bit of your time with us. Remember to pause, to take just a moment to reflect, to recognize what's going on, to listen to your body, to be curious with what's going on with you, and to choose one small thing you can do today to slightly pivot in a more positive direction. Until next time, I've got you and you've got this. Take care. Congratulations on choosing to invest in yourself. I know your time is precious. Thank you for spending it here with me. I believe in helping you look up, step forward, and fully realizing your potential. If today's conversation resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd rate and comment on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you know someone who would benefit, please share this episode with them. Let's stay connected. Visit me at dr-cynthia.com, and you can find me on all the socials at Dr. Cynthia Bentzen-Mercer. Until next time, remember, boldly start working on your future today.